Good morning, everyone. You must have noticed that it's an academic family, right? So both myself, the wife, and the baby are all scholars. Okay, so what I'll be presenting today is some reflection on COVID-19 and the viability of curriculum adjustment and delivery options in the South African educational space, right? And I will start with the fact that there's been a lot of papers as relating to COVID-19, and we have relative experience, some similar and different angle to look at how COVID-19 has affected us over time, right? It's a pandemic that is still ongoing in itself and is developing in different phases. And so there are a lot of papers written on education, on entertainment, on geopolitics as to how COVID-19 has affected us in different realms. So this paper was published last year with the Journal of Transformation in Higher Education. So I'm just going to give a snapshot of some of the arguments we made in the paper, and you are welcome to look it up for the details. So I'm discussing the introduction. First, I want to problematize the whole concept of COVID-19. Like I said, it has become business unusual, and in all facets of our life, within the global space, economically, politically, and within the space of education that we are familiar with, COVID-19 is a challenge as it is. And because of what it was, first, it is a situation which we have not found ourselves before. For that reason, there were different adaptive mechanisms that were adopted by different countries in meeting up with the need of COVID-19. The first immediate response, which all of us are familiar with, was the immediate lockdown in all realms, in all countries of the world. And with that lockdown came in lots of implications. There were implications to the lockdown, economic implications, the effect on livelihood options for households and the likes. And within the educational space, with the lockdown, because our traditional delivery option of education is the physical contact. That's what we are familiar with. Especially in Africa, it is more of physical contact than online. Online conversation was almost non-existent, little or non-existent. So there was a need to also adapt in that sense, in the sense that now we have to come up with different adaptive options, both in policy and practice. Some policies were mimicked from global happenings. They are not necessarily contextual to the environment, but because, let's say, the UK adopted a particular policy. For instance, when everybody was talking about face masks, every other country would say, let's wear face masks. And then immediately UK said, okay, no more face masks. Other country would just say, no more face masks. Not necessarily because that relates to their particular realm. So this is it. And then, like I said, because of the lockdown, there was a need for a change in the traditional modus operandi of curriculum and delivery option in our educational space. We have to move from the physical contact teaching and to come up with other measures in which we need to continue the semester, right? To continue the academic year. Then we start talking about having the online session. So basically what we want to look at here in this paper is how viable is the use of the online session for different reps. It is more viable in an environment whereby internet connectivity is high, a large chunk of the people are connected and they can move there. And away from the connectivity, we'll talk about knowledge space. How viable is knowledge space and the like. So basically that's what we argue in this paper to talk about that. So first we need to ask ourselves, within the online and physical space, what do we have to see? So for the online space, the online pedagogy, first we talk about convenience and ease, right? For instance, now I'm here and I am having my class in South Africa even while in the global north. Technically I left, I've been out of South Africa now for more than 3-4 months now, but I'm having my class still back at home, and we cannot relate to that, right? So it's easy, it's convenient to both for the facilitator and the student. You can do a lot of stuff at the same time, and most of us can relate to the fact that sometimes we'll be doing a different thing and while in online meetings and and the like. So it's easy. And secondly, it provides user unrestricted access to educational materials and resources available everywhere. You can access the libraries in Bergen, or the libraries in Toronto or in Miami while you are in Kenya or Botswana or Saudi Arabia or wherever you are. So yeah, this is what it leads to. And then it encourages peer-to-peer collaborative learning across space. For instance, at the peak of COVID, we had a class in one of my class, geopolitics, whereby I had students from Germany, from South Africa, from Namibia in the same class. We were trying to test if we could have an online university whereby we have students from different realms of the world in the same class. So we tested that for a semester to see how that will work. It was only, the idea only came because now we have to sit at home. But in the physical space, that was not possible. So basically, these are some of the advantages we have for the online. Now, the disadvantage of that is that psychological support, which is innate in man, is denied in an online space. Man by nature is a social being. We want to relate. And if you take away relation from man, you have taken away a large chunk of what makes man man. If you take away the social aspect of man. So that's what happens in an online space. You are just on your own. You cannot relate with peers. You cannot have faces to see. You don't know if I'm smiling or I'm angry. You cannot relate to the basic needs when you are in the online space. And then, like I said, physical interaction and body language is gone, right? If I'm in a class like this, both as facilitators and learners, I can relate in my class. I can guess the flow of the class, the mood and the swing of the class to determine what I'm going to do. If I see that you guys are the way your faces are looking now, looking bored, and then I will need to find something a joke to bring you back to the class and all that, right? But in an online space, you probably may just be watching, you may just be online, and you just be online, just see that you are online, and then you are doing a different thing, right? So that is what happens with this space. So there's no physical interaction. Even away from that, even as students, within the space of the students themselves, there are things in which the lecturer will say, and you probably will not understand what the lecturer is saying for many obvious reasons. But you can ask your colleague, right? And then the colleague tries to explain what is happening, and then you get better understanding by your colleague. This is not viable in an online space, which becomes the disadvantage of that. And then it denies for social interaction, and then physical mental alertness. That becomes an issue. And if you look at it during the point of COVID, there were a lot of issues related to mental issues, mental distress and the like that became high as a result of COVID. And with that comes different implications. Gender-based violence and the likes that were happening all leads to the fact that that interaction of man was missing. And then, like I said, peer-to-peer interaction is also denied. So basically, that is the issue when we talk about COVID in itself. So the method and the theory in which we try to look at to see the viability of curriculum adjustment within the South African space is to look at the theory of localization. Sorry, there's supposed to be a G here. It's glocalization, right? Globalization. And the premise is that it's for us to look at global events and the happenings in the global event and trying to contextualize it within your immediate environment, right? So not taking everything within the global space, hook, line, and sinker, but trying to adapt it within your global space. And the media speaker before me showed the framework in which she's working on in the paper she's just currently working on. So basically that's that. We found that the discourse on curriculum adjustment has to do with student needs. We must understand our students, know our students in the sense of their origin, their place, their economical standing, right? To determine how we adjust curriculum. So it is possible even within the same states to adjust curriculum in different institutions that is not the same, right? And even within the same institution or the same facilitator can have different curriculum adjustment for different classes, depending on the configuration of your class. And then what we do was to use a participatory action desktop research method. What that implies is that it's participatory action in the sense that we try to look at our own experience as facilitators in South Africa. So one of the author is in duty, Durban University of Technology. I am in the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And then the third author is in another institution in Nigeria, Federal University of Technology in Nigeria. So we tend to look at different participatory, and then we triangulated that with secondary data to validate our points. So within the South African educational space, we have 26 higher institutions in South Africa. 11 are general academic institutions, 9 are comprehensive universities, 6 are universities of technology, and they are distributed around the 9 provinces in South Africa. Now, within the South African space, we are still plagued with historical antecedents of social injustice. And when you talk about South Africa, you talk about the issue of apartheid and the inequalities that has happened, the social inequality or social injustice that happened in South Africa as a result of apartheid. And with that, research has shown that South Africa is one of the country with one of the highest level of inequality, economic inequality in South Africa, whereby wealth and poverty are sitting side by side. That's what we have in South Africa. And then we have funding issues and resources allocation in South Africa, whereby you have that there are some institutions that are super wealthy, super rich to provide resources for their students, while there are some institutions that cannot match that. So these are the inequality which we have within the South African space. And then the need for affordable education. That is linked back to the issue of historical antecedents of social injustice. Poverty is prevalent in the country. So education itself is not affordable. The physical education, which is cheaper, is not affordable. Now going to online is more expensive, because now you need to talk about data availability, you need to talk about the need for having the gadgets, your laptops and the likes, to have this. These are not available within the South African space. So the reality is that there's a vertical and horizontal inequality in South Africa in terms of policy response and as well as in terms of the impact on the student as well as the government. There's inequality as relating to that. And then, for instance, I was talking about technology, the availability of laptops and the likes. Realize that when you look at these statistics here by the Statistics South Africa, you realize that those people that have ownership of computers, you realize that within the rural communities where most of the students within our own school, KwaZulu-Natal, University of KwaZulu-Natal and the Durban University of Technology, most of the students are from rural communities, right? Realize that most of them, the statistics of ownership of laptops or computers at that place is extremely low. So the same thing also applies when it comes to internet access, right? You realize that within the rural community, it is also extremely low. Internet access at home is low, and even going to educational institutions or facilities, you realize that within the rural regions, internet access is still low. And this is the place whereby you have most of the students. So the issue of connectivity is prevalent within the South African space, which will affect curricular adjustment, or which is affecting curricular adjustments as it is. The technical knowledge, like the question somebody asked in the previous talk, technical knowledge even within the space of the facilitator itself is limited. So when there was a shift from the physical space now to online, even facilitators now needed to learn how to use basic computer software, right? It becomes difficult even for the facilitator. So if the facilitator itself is not familiar with the online space, how will that facilitator be able to translate that to the students? And then the student is a different ballgame entirely. And that actually affected the productivity of the students while we moved to the online space. For that reason, we had students that had to carry over the course spill over and probably not graduate and the likes. And then also the quality of education dropped drastically as a result of technical knowledge alone, right? The student could not access knowledge, and they could not. And also one very important point here is that even the space of assessment became limited, because you have a course like, let's say, in political science, political science second year or third year, whereby you need to ask questions that are analytical, they need to discuss and the likes. Now you can't ask questions like that. You're asking objective questions, yes and no. You cannot ask yes and no questions when you are supposed to be at the level of doing analysis, right? So that's what happens, because now you want to make it easy for yourself as a facilitator to be able to just have an assessment at the end of the day. So assessment was just to fulfill law righteousness, and not necessarily to do what is essential, because of what technical knowledge was relatively low. And then attention span within the online space is difficult, in the sense that within the physical space, it's easier for you when somebody is not concentrating, you can caution the person and bring the person to class. But within the online space, students are of the nature of you just see them online, and then they will not be there entirely. They will probably be doing a different thing. They will not even be by the ear space of what you are saying, right? So what I do, for instance, in my class sometimes is to say that I can just call you randomly, and if I call you twice and you do not respond, you have a mark down for attendance, right? So for that reason, people tend to stay around, and even when I don't do that, I don't even mark down, but it's just a deterrence measure to allow students to come to that space. And even while they are there, the attention space online is very, very low, right? It's almost non-existent. So that's the challenge we have with moving to the online space. So in conclusion, I will just raise that there's a need for proper utilization of the online space to adjust to the demands of less contact-based approach in favor of the virtual approaches. And then there's a need for blended pathology, in the sense that now COVID is gradually shifting away. There is a likelihood that because of these challenges we have raised for online space, facilitators, students, institutions will probably reason that now we'll just go back to class, and then we continue business as usual pre-COVID. All right. What we have realized with the online space is that it is still viable regardless of what it is. So a blended space where we have both physical and online facilitation option is the way to go. And one way I've been able to use this is to create an introduction of a particular topic online. We have a discussion on that topic online, and then have a physical conversation whereby we conclude on that particular topic. So that way it becomes a blended space. And then there's a need for us to consider issues around the localization of teaching and learning technology, considering the peculiarities of our space. In this space is South Africa. We can relate that to our own spaces, to focus on both the visibility of that, the challenges of online measures, as well as the opportunities that are available for our students. I thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions from the audience? I have one question. Is there a certain policy in your country regarding the online education at the higher education level, a certain policy to be abide with?
I don't know of any policy per se, but what just happened is that I think it was just a general practice as it is, that people just felt, okay, everybody's moving online, then let's just move online, right? So it's more, it has to do more with individual institutions and the administrators of this institution deciding on, okay, this is what we are going to do and the likes. But yes, I think there are policies that just talk about the fact that, okay, students are not supposed to be in school at this point. A general policy on lockdown measure in itself, in the sense that you cannot have more than a certain number of people in an enclosed space. So university just felt, okay, they fell within that category, right? You cannot have, at the point, you cannot have more than 50 people in an enclosed space. And you know that a typical class in the higher institution will probably have 1,000 students, right? In my 100 level class, I have between 700 and 1,000 for a module. And you said 50 in a class. So university just assumed they just fell within that category and decided, okay, let's just stay out of the university, pending when the university will allow, the general policy on lockdown and the requirements for the number of people in enclosed spaces changes. Yeah.
And the blended modality, blended learning, that modality is the modality that you have used in your university during the COVID-19 pandemic?
No.
Not only that.
No, the blended model, we have not used it, right? The blended model is the recommendation in which the paper is giving us the way to go. That by the time now COVID is gradually coming to, not coming to an end, but coming to an endurable space whereby we have to live with it, right? And now we have to go back to physical teaching. So what we're saying is that instead of going back to the business as usual pre-COVID, right? What we can do going forward is to blend the both physical and online pathology together and pedagogy together to have a better delivery option for institutions.
Less contact based.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. You were talking about the physical and online teaching. In your research, have you come across to the statistic of student achievement during the COVID? So it's higher or lower? Because I have seen in some area the academic achievement of the student during the COVID and during the online teaching is better than physical, especially the area of theory. Of course, the practical will be lower, I think. But in your research,
okay, I think I've come across that, and from experience and from preliminary findings, what you have as assessment in COVID is what I would term not a real assessment, in the sense that, you know, when I was talking about technological difficulty for facilitators. So what is happening now is that facilitators tend to simplify assessments for students and for themselves. And for that reason, the results you are having is not the same results you would have had. In fact, it's not the same assessment that probably would have been given to the students pre-COVID. But now we tend to blend everything. That's why I said that a second year student, or a second or third year student that is supposed to be given a topic in political science, for instance, that is more analytical to discuss a scenario and the likes. Now you are giving the students questions that are supposed to be for first year students, right? Asking them a yes and no question and giving objective, right? At higher education level, that should not be a question you're asking. Probably in high school, you ask students a yes and no answer, true and false, right? So what do you expect for a student that is in second year that you're asking true or false? What will happen is that the assessment at that point will show that they are doing better, right? But what we say is that it's a small screen of the actual reality. And at the end of the day, what we produce as graduates at the end of the day are half-baked graduates. So that's the space.
I think yes, the assessment issue, the online assessment is even it is new experience for us who teach in university.
Yeah.
But the students also, they say we are saving the time of transportation and logistic, and we are only focusing on the material, the teaching materials.
Yeah.
This is from their side.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering why does assessment have to be yes, no, particularly in disciplines like political science where they can write essays and they can submit them online? Why does it have to change so much?
Yeah, that's the point in itself, right? In the sense that the facilitator themselves, in most cases we just concentrate on the fact that students have low technology, their technological strengths to internet use and the likes is low. And in most cases we don't look at the facilitators themselves. In a space whereby the facilitator themselves are also don't have the knowledge of this system, they tend to go for the simplify option. Right? Instead of going for the more rigorous option. So in that way, you have a facilitator that actually do not know how to use these things. And then in some cases, the facilitator will be on the ground that the student also don't know how to use it. So that reason, let's simplify the stuff.
Okay, so we
At the
have
end
to
of the
train
day,
the facilitators as well.
yes, you need so it has to be a both-way assessment. You look at strengthening the facilitator as well as strengthening the student. That way we can have a close to standard assessment protocol going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's why I think, picking it up from that point, it's important to note that the success of this methodology you mentioned would be based on a particular environment, in the specificity of that particular environment. So what you have explained to us now may not be the situation in this country, may be different from mine as well. So I think that should form the basis of analysis. So what would be a success in your country may not work in another country.
You are correct. And that's what I concluded with, to say that you need to look at the issues, the peculiarity of your students. And you see, I argue that even within your students, you need to look at your class A may be different from class B. So what you use for class A does not necessarily imply that you use the same methodology for class B. So we need to be relative in the methodology which we decide for each of the classes. And even as facilitators, sometimes we are lazy. I'm also a victim of that. Or is a victim actually? I'm also a perpetrator to that, in the sense that we tend to just maintain the same methodology over the years. We use this for this semester, we are using it again next semester, regardless of the students that are coming in, right?
But it can still be interesting to view the different outcome when you use the same methodology in different contexts. So then, you can see how it could be different and how it, so that's a learning in itself.
Yeah.
I think that's the end of the questions, I think. Okay, thank you for the very nice presentation. And now we have the last.